He's a pretty cool guy.
Okay.
All right, well, let's go ahead and we'll see if we can go ahead and get started. Well, Monica's not here either, so we'll be looking for her too. So that's awesome. So I want to welcome everybody. This is awesome. We've had quite a few cancellations. I think spring is here, but we will send everybody. We promise to send everybody who registered a recording of today. So I'm Monica Cochran, and I'm from Southeastern Michigan, and a longtime educator, and especially like to be around the fringes of education, you know, the new, different, fringy kind of stuff. And I'm a longtime fan of Sir Ken Robinson, and just thrilled to be able to read this book along with the other ones, and had a chance to meet him about 6 years ago. It was pretty amazing. He is a very amazing guy. So I'm looking forward to this. And then I'm going to let my other co-hosts here, Julie and Laura, introduce themselves, if you guys don't mind.
I don't mind. I will. I'm Laura Watson. I'm in Reno, Nevada, and I'm a former teacher. I left my public school position in 2005. Opened a pizzeria, worked with a lot of teenagers. I'm still doing that, but that's not my main focus. I've always wanted to get back into education, but seeing how miserable all these kids were, and then I have two of my own. My two girls are 21 and 23. My own children were, it was about, I'm going to say 6 years ago, they were in high school and telling me how miserable they are and how they hated learning. And, as an educator, that was crushing. So I got back into education thinking, how can I do it different? And so I started my own program, Agile Learning Center, almost 2 years ago. It didn't last very long. I really kind of dove in because of COVID, and I wasn't really prepared to do that. So, but now I've closed that. I found another team, and we're working on creating a project-based self-directed learning program in the Tahoe area, and working on growing that into Reno and Vegas, and making a sort of a self-directed learning ecosystem within the state of Nevada. So hopefully some big things coming up with that. And we started this group, it was a little over a year and a half ago. We had talked about, I don't know if anybody here is familiar with Mind Valley, but that was Mind Valley and Arrow were the two groups that we thought, if we could put that together and create kind of a personal growth and how it affects education, and how it interacts with, or how young people learn and how important it is, we thought if we put it together, we might have something. So we've been doing our monthly meetings for about a year and a half. And Julie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Laura. We have some similar stories here. I'm in Northern California, San Francisco Bay Area, and I am also a former educator, and also very disheartened by the system. And so I left real early, and my kids actually never went to school. They've been always unschooled. They're now 15 and a half and 13. And they're loving their life. They still, I've worked really hard to create a community so that, when they hit these tween years, so many of their friends have gone off to school solely for the socialization, and so community's always been a real big focus of mine. I'm founder of Marin Homeschoolers, a 501c7 organization that we did shutter for COVID times because of liability issues. And I am also working on a project to create a replicable and scalable model for California. Our laws here are a little different than Nevada and not as easy to start educational alternatives. So I I've been involved in the legislative work as a board member of Homeschool Association of California and on the legislative team at California Homeschool Network. So I have real intimate knowledge about what's needed to make an alternative work here. And pass the sniff test. There's lots of under the table kind of stuff, small stuff, but if you want something big, something that's going to be replicable and scalable and something that you could advertise for and all that kind of stuff, then you need something that's going to pass that sniff test. So I do feel that we have that with Homebase, which is basically a community co-working space for home independent education families. So instead of providing the content, we are literally just providing the space, and the content comes to the space. And I know there are other spaces that work like that, but like I said, this one's got some other aspects to it. The legal aspect being the most important. So yeah, and so that's my goal, the work that I'm doing. I also am a consultant and I do homeschool events. I was doing them in person through Marin Homeschoolers. And then when that shuttered, I put my efforts into my own independent business. I call it 10-Toad, like TOAD, like frog and toad. And now so far we've only done online events for the last 2 years, which have been really well received. And I love doing them, and it's really easy doing the online ones. So I do hope to return to in-person events, but right now we're online. So check it out, 10toad.com. That's me. I'm gonna
Thanks so much, Julie. I've just been coding with people here, letting people in, so I apologize. But yeah, we are so excited that we can be here with everybody, because I think that everybody brings a different perspective. So like these guys, I was disillusioned also, but like Kathy Ann and I will say, we go back a couple more decades. We were disillusioned a couple more decades ago. So yeah, and right now I am in private consulting also, and love partnering with people and doing cool things, and primarily work with what I call learners who are, what do you call them, Kathy Ann, quirky, or just learn in different ways, right? So Kathy Ann and I have worked together in the past and stuff. So we want to continue to do that. And that's why I call my practice Learning Without Borders. So I don't want to talk too much, like outside the box learns. I love it. Yeah. So let me let this person in. And what we're going to do today, I know some of you haven't read, but we were going to have Julie introduce the book. And then I think I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the core competencies that Dr. Sirken has. And then Laura, refresh my memory, because I'm trying to multitask and not doing it very well.
I have one of the longer chapters on creating miracles. So how to set up all the things that we should consider in when we're talking about prime learning environments.
All right, sounds good. Julie, you want to take it away there? I'm still inviting some people in here that either couldn't get in or something. So I'm going to put myself on mute.
Okay, so since we have some people who haven't read the book yet, I'm going to try not to give away any spoilers. But the way Sirken and Kate introduced the book is the first 3 words are "here you are." And I love it. I love how, and then he goes on to kind of give us a sense of time and space and presence, and giving us a chance to become present with our thoughts. And it really was a very grounding way to get the book started, I thought, and really opens up your mind. So I really appreciated that type of introduction to the book. And then he goes on to say about, what we're going to be talking about in the book. And, first and foremost, he wants to address how the systems of which we are all a part of are no longer fit for purpose. Education is one such system. Obviously, to me, that brought up images of Ivan Illich's deschooling society, right? We really are, working with systems that are just outdated. And then, with the 21st century, I think I saw a meme on Facebook recently. It was like 1971 is to, 2021 as 2022 is to like, goodness, I don't even want to do the math in my head right now, but it just, it's like mind blowing, right? And I was born in 1971. So to me, that was just like, wow, right? But, when you think of the technology and the way that we've advanced from 71 till now, but then, take that advancement in just the last 10 years, and then, what's going to be happening, is just going to be exponentially faster. So, I mean, we really do need to kind of, think about changing our systems. What else it also makes me think of is, let's see here. Let's see. He says, and we face an increasingly febrile future. The answer is not to do better what we've done before. We have to do something else. He's addressing the, educational reformers that have all come before, who've wanted to change the system and make it better. And basically, for me, what that brought to mind was Buckminster Fuller's quote, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete." And that's basically why I do what I do. And I think it's basically why we all do what we do, is that we recognize the old model is not, it's not serving our needs. And we need to build something new, get outside that system. I do applaud the teachers that are in the system that are trying to make the difference. I was there one time. I did not have what it takes to do that. I mean, so the teachers who can stay there for the students and be that, that grounding voice, that ground, that helps them through the chaos that schooling can be. They are all angels and saints. And I just, so grateful that they are there. So, and then of course that always brings up, well, we can't do away with the system completely. They serve a purpose. And yes, of course, and we can still continue to try and make that system as best we can. But it's like a monopoly, right? There's no real viable alternatives out there, other than the mom and pops that we are all working with, which are great, but they tend to be transient, So what else? He talks about how education demoralizes young people rather than bolstering them. I mean, this is something we are all too familiar with. And he also acknowledges how the teaching profession is full of wonderful, dedicated individuals who are passionate about the work they do. And it's heartbreaking to work all your life towards this goal of being a teacher and then realizing like, this is not what I signed up for. And then walking away from that, the guilt, the responsibility that you feel to the community, to the kids, to the school itself, to make it better. It's a really hard thing to do. So as much as I applaud those that stay, I do also applaud those of us who leave. That's a really, really hard decision. I know it was for me, and I'm sure it was for all of you. Let's see here. And the last thing I really wanted to talk about, he does mention a couple of quotes that, again, bring us back to that perspective of, being present and thinking in really big, like a little almost too like existential, like it almost like makes me like, okay. But like a couple of quotes he brought up were psychologist Jean Piaget's, "Only education is capable of saving our societies from possible collapse, whether violent or gradual." And he mentions, history provides many examples. The visionary novelist H.G. Wells puts the point even more sharply. Human history, he said, is a race between education and catastrophe. So yeah, like, I mean, those kinds of thoughts when you're, when you think about the work that we do and the importance of the work that we do, it's a little mind blowing. And, he ends the introduction with what I think we all feel in our bones is this urgent plea. It's like literally, I mean, those are the words he uses, this urgent plea to do something to change this system. And I know that you all feel that same feeling in your bones like I do. So I just want to, take a minute to be grateful for all of you and thank you for the work that you do and for being here. And I really appreciate you, your presence today. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Julie. Anyone have anything to add to the intro, that if you've read the book or have some thoughts on just in general Sirkens' work? We're a small group. You can just unmute or you can put it in the chat if you're not in a good spot, because his work spans about 45 years. He's been doing it and he actually started out in theater. So it's kind of interesting. So feel free, Gail or Marlise or Diane, anyone have anything to add? Flora?
I know just for my own circumstance, it was that recognition of, well, especially with working with so many teenagers outside of school, where the only kids that I came across that would light up were the ones that, they were really involved in either a sport or band, and they had that community with them. And that's what they loved. Most every kid that I ever worked with as their employer, the stories were largely, oh, I've got to go do this. And it was really, they didn't see any purpose to what they were doing. And, most of them were feeling like, I can't wait to get done with school so I can start my life, is the general feeling of these young people. And I thought, that's not a way we should educate. I think we shouldn't have to wait. I know I felt that way when I was in high school and actually through college. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to start my life. And so I feel like if we could get beyond that, and that's why I love this book and some other things that I've read and some videos on YouTube for Sir Ken Robinson. I love how he gets that kind of imaginative thoughts going about what education could be. And, I love the title, Imagine If. So anything else anybody else wants to add?
I think Kathy Ann is unmuted. Kathy Ann, do you have something to add?
Well, one of the things that jumped out to me from the book was the quote, be the change.
Yes.
That rock and roll was not a government-led initiative. Revolutions do not wait for legislation. They emerge from what people do at the ground level. I enjoyed that.
Yeah. And I think you've been one of those people at the ground level for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And dipping your toe in, like so many of us, into charter, you dipped your toe in often. I don't know, maybe you jumped in wholehearted, maybe dipping toe wasn't quite right? But I think,
the charter school is still going.
Good deal. Yeah,
and one of my former students is now a teacher there.
Awesome. Yeah, I know. I have people were telling me, I just finished medical school. I just started my practice. I'm, oh yeah, I'm getting up there. I just got invited to my first my class's daughter's wedding. So yeah, I'm kind of getting there. Yeah, but I think that whole thing of you go in, but you always can step back. And I appreciated that about stepping back and looking at the whole system, because it's not just individuals, it's the whole system that needs some transforming. Gail, you've unmuted.
Hello,
What do you have to
sorry,
add?
I was late. I haven't read it yet, sadly,
Oh, okay.
but I'm so looking forward to it, because I've been doing this for 30 years, and this being helping kids do what they want to do, and removing what my job has been is removing the obstacles
Right.
to helping them get where they want to be. So we had a 12-year-old get into the actuarial sciences department and a 13-year-old get into the medical department by job shadowing a neonatal surgeon every Thursday, you know. So breaking down like John Taylor Gatto did. He was my mentor. I met him in 1996, but we wrote back and forth frequently because I'm in Canada, and I helped show or find the information for the connections between the system here and the system there. That when Edgerton Ryerson met Horace Mann, and so we ended up with the same system as well. And the just being able to help people see the purpose, the true purpose behind the motivations for these people. And while they may have thought they were doing the right thing, when we look at it now, it's absurd. And having quotes from Edgerton Ryerson of, you know, it's cheaper to build schools than prisons. And because they believed that the system would eradicate crime and eliminate violence, because they'd all be controlled. All the little ruffians would be controlled and brought up properly. His idea of literacy meant, did this person speak the King's English? Because if they didn't, if they had an Irish brogue, or, you know, the native languages or any other language, that they were illiterate in his mind. So many things. So having the opportunity to tell people on a daily basis that they have the freedom to do what they know is right for them, that they don't have to be told what to do, that they can access information, that you can have high standards without standardization. You know, there's so many things. I loved a quote from Skip College that said, "We were taught to be taught, so we learned to be led."
Oh, I love
And
that too. Yeah, that's amazing.
yeah,
Yeah.
so, you know, when I'm dealing with calls from people, 5 to 10 calls a day from the hotline. We have a homeschooling hotline for the Ontario Federation of Teaching Parents. And so we are, you know, getting a great deal of calls. I mean, the first question is, how do I sign up for homeschooling? You know, and it's like, okay, let's start from the beginning here. And
You don't need to sign up. There you go.
all the
There you
yeah,
go.
exactly. All
Yeah.
the options that they have can be overwhelming, and some people, they do need to have their hands held and confidence built for the adults first. I think sometimes I've said it's like the dog whisperer show, you know. He goes in and he never changes the dogs, he changes the people that own the dogs. So not relating kids to dogs, but to help the parents have the confidence and the ideology and the self-esteem and the support that they need to regain the control and responsibility for their own kids' education is huge.
It is.
So
It's very
sorry, I
big.
talked
And
too much.
no, I think, but you know, and just like the people that feel there are too many choices, here in the States, we have people who feel there's no choice. So I get the calls, and especially during the pandemic, mostly from referrals, believe it or not, people who have worked with me that will tell these folks, "Well, come work with Monica. She'll help your child develop their interests, find out their strengths, and do things." And yet, it's very hard for them to let go of the conveyor belt. Because, and that's really what Sir Ken was talking about in almost all of his work, is that we've demoted the essence of the kids, of the adults, and said, you must fit into this tiny box. And if you don't fit into the tiny box, then what you do is unimportant, and you are unimportant, because we really have a tiered education system. When it was developed, and it still is that there were only going to be a few people that were going to be the thinkers, and then there'd be some people who had skills, but the rest of the people were to be educated or trained to, oh, you said it so well, Gail, to be followers, to listen to the bells and do things. So, this kind of leads into the next section, and that is the purposes of education. He talks, there is a personal one, there's a cultural one, there's an economic one, and there's a social one. And, the designers of our current education systems were focused on a couple of those, right? The economic and the cultural. We wanted to make people fit in, and we wanted to, quote unquote. Unfortunately, the world has changed dramatically. And I didn't want to quote a lot of statistics, but he quotes amazing statistics on just how the world has changed and how much it's hurt the children because they're not coming out even ready to do the things personally, culturally, economically, socially, not looking inside and can't take advantage of what's outside. So he reimagines difference, and I'm going to put all 8 of them in here. He says instead of these fragmented subjects, he says the next step would be to reorganize into disciplines, because disciplines are fluid and they shift and change. And he said instead of all the subjects, he recommends these core competencies. And there should be 8 of them yes, there are 8 of them. And so basically, their subjects are based on a very, very limited understanding of intelligence. And you guys can probably figure out which 2 those are, right? Can you do math? And do you have good verbal skills? Those are the only 2 that in the conventional system. And then also what's going to be important later. And actually, this all worked pretty well until like the 80s, right? And then the world accelerated very quickly. So he doesn't really see things as being separate from one another. And for example, he says mathematics is not defined by what he calls propositional knowledge, which we do, all the algorithms we teach kids, like it's a ladder that you're climbing up. He said it has concepts, it has processes, it has methods. And it's the same for science and art and all the other ones. So therefore, he says, let's talk about the disciplines because they merge and they collaborate. And the great inventions are all people who were able to take things and integrate them and synthesize them and come up with something new. So he's looking at a much more holistic view. And as he's saying, if you're a journalist and you're writing an article, well, then you must have good writing skills, but you have to have more than that. You have to be able to interview people. You have to have deductive reasoning. You need literacy. You need social sciences. You need to be, obviously you still need to be able to write. A surgeon has to understand, which I don't know if all of them do, the patient's whole condition, right? I'm not sure they all got that one that well, as well as the procedures they have to do. So what he's really saying is if we could do that, then we would have a generation of people who could have competencies. And he also said that the competencies develop not by segregating people by ages and by ranking them all the time, but these competencies actually develop by learning about them, seeing other people model them, and then having a chance, which we don't ever do, to apply them. So you can't become competent at something if you only understand it. So you have to be able to use it, and we have to nurture these. I don't know if it was in this book but if the lettuce isn't growing, you don't blame the lettuce, right? You look at the soil, you look at the fertilizer, you figure out if you're watering enough. And in schools, we either blame the parents or we blame the kids, but we don't look at what's happening. And one of the biggest ones, I don't know how many of you ever have done this, but when I went to school, it was pretty much shut up and listen. Right? There wasn't a big place for curiosity. And that is the number one driver of learning, real learning, authentic learning. And that's a huge one. So we know, because we see babies, they're totally curious. 2-year-olds are totally curious, right? Toddlers, why? We don't want kids to stop doing that. And yet they come to us in our education systems that way. And by 3rd grade, I write about it off on my blog and stuff. There's what I call the 3rd grade days. What page, there's the curiosity is gone. So that one's huge. The second one, I think after that, is creativity. And we have, again, a very, very narrow version of what creativity is. And you can get to your creativity after you do your regular stuff, right? You don't get to do creativity unless you did your 3 math sheets or your whatever, right? So, but that's just the ability to generate a new idea and to use it. So it's not just limited to art and music and dance. So we have kind of narrowed everything. It's not one power, it's everything. So we think it's really the ability to generate a new idea and put it in practice. And we so need that. I mean, it's just so important. Oh, I love that. No, not 3 R's, but 8 C's. Yeah. Well, he does like his acronyms too. So he doesn't have them, but it's really good. And the third one, and I hope you guys can think about these, and, I'm going to open this up so that you can talk a little bit about which ones you found to be the most helpful for you. And the one he calls, the next one, is criticism. And when I first saw that, I go, what do you mean criticism? But he's really talking, in my words, critical thinking. That's the ability to analyze information and know the difference between a fact and an opinion, right? What's a reasonable argument? That's so important. We have to be able to consider not our own perspective. We have to consider other people's perspective. And we have to kind of have that ability to stand back and look at a little bit dispassionately. And we have a whole bunch of triggers right now going on in the world where is you is or is you ain't, are you for me or are you against me? That black and white thinking is developmentally appropriate when you're about 8 or 9. We hope that thinking is going to shift into gray area thinking as they get to be teenagers and young adults. However, we've got an awful lot of people that are just stuck there. But it's really, really, and right now with social media, it's not how much they can hold in their head. It's how easily can they discern all of the information that's coming to them. I mean, they actually think this is like, you had an encyclopedia. There was one book they thought they could put all the important information into, right? Well, Google does that, and it changes all the time. And I can still remember when people thought Wikipedia was like some terrible thing. How would you know if that information was true? Well, now nobody does, right? You can go to 5 websites and you don't know. So you have to have a way of discerning those kind of things. And he says it should be the heart of every discipline. And then the other one, the fourth one, is communication. That shut up and listen didn't really help people learn communication skills. So we think in sounds, we think in images, right? In movement, music, metaphors, analogies, right? We have to be able to reason, and we have to be able to empathize. Because if you can't walk in the other person's shoes, and you can't see the world from them. So all of the fluency and literacy and math, it's all important. It's not like one is important and the other one isn't. It's just that we're not weaving them together. We've decided, in fact, there was just some politician who said, you don't need social emotional learning when you're doing math. You just need to get to the right answer. Well, they obviously haven't spent much time with someone who can't do math, right? Because they can't get to, right. And sometimes there's more than one right answer, more than one way. But I'm sure all of you have come across a kid that's frozen. They can't even start. They're in fear. They're in flight. So, it's fun to have these little sound bites, but they're not really helpful. So we really have to help kids. And again, it's not just the verbal communication. It's that tone that I heard when that person said that. It's the body language. It's the words. but 55% is body language, right? And what is it? 38% is tone, and only 7% are the actual words. So when we're talking about communication, are we connecting? Are we connecting with the people that we're talking? So that's really, so we've got to be able to communicate thoughts and feelings. The next one he talks about is collaboration. Gosh, that is not something at all that we do in schools, right? It is competition. Collaboration is, what would they call cheating, right? If you and your friend worked on a math problem together, you weren't learning, you were cheating, right? And the world doesn't work that way. If we're not collaborating, we're not going to be able to handle the big things that are happening. But we are social creatures, so we do gravitate. Even no problem, Diane. Thanks so much for coming. We'll send you the rest of the recording. But I think so much we've got to draw on each other's strengths. We've got to keep working on those kind of things so that we are working together and that we're stronger together. And we also have to help people learn how to resolve conflicts and support. If we come up with a solution, an agreed upon solution, how do you support each other? Because I think everything falls apart. And that probably leads to the next one, which is compassion. You know, if you have empathy and you can't put it into practice, it's not helpful. So compassion is basically to act accordingly. You know how someone else feels, so can you act accordingly, right? We can begin imagining how we would feel, but we've got to practice the empathy. We can't just have it inside. So the bullying, the violence that we're having right now, prejudice, it's a lack of compassion. That's, it stems from that. So the world is more, not so much independent now, but we're really seeing it's interdependent. And without compassion, that's kind of hard. And I think the last two are huge too, because we're seeing total lack of them in the world. One is what he calls composure. I kind of call it self-regulation, whatever word you want to call it, but that's that ability to connect our inner life, right, with the outer world. So we have a sense of harmony and balance in the world. We have an awful lot of people with anxiety and depression for, all kinds of reasons. However, school can't, I think, Julie, that we can't have everything in a vacuum over here. School doesn't exist over here in the rest of the world. And so it's more, we keep putting additional homework and exams. All that's leading to is people being more disengaged. And we've got to kind of look more holistically so that we can help young people. But I think the biggest people we have to help is ourselves. We have to all develop more composure, more regulation, understanding that we co-regulate, not just regulate. When you guys come in the room, we hope we all were smiling at you and helping you feel welcome, right? How many teachers really do that in schools and parents and things? We've kind of created a situation. Mindfulness is, I think in some parts of our country, they're not allowed to teach mindfulness. They're not allowed to say that word. It sounds too woo-woo or this. It's kind of an interesting idea that slowing down and being mindful is a problem. But I'm guessing there's a little bit harder to control people that way. That's not from Sirkens, that's just Monica's idea, okay? And the last part is citizenship. What does that mean? What is not just being a citizen of your country, but a citizen of the world? We keep talking about the world, our planet won't survive. And he has a great comment. The planet's going to be fine. It will do what it needs to do. It will be us that aren't going to be here. Our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. So we have to play a role in cultivating citizenship, and not just in our own country, not nationalism, but, worldwide, globally. So hopefully he doesn't see childhood as a rehearsal for the world. He sees we need to help people be a part of it right now. So everything they do. So we want the skills of citizenship to be practiced And some of you may be involved in more democratic kind of schools or holistic schools where each person has a contribution to make, but having each person be able to develop to their fullest potential using their unique talents and interests and strength is really going to make the whole world better. So I kind of want to open it all up because I just think it's just awesome. Are there any of these competencies that, which ones speak to you the most? What resonates? And I don't want to call it anybody and put you on the spot, but I'm really curious if there's one or two or three that really resonate with you more than others. Because you're all experienced in this.
I think
Darlene.
the collaboration part is so key. And I feel, well, as you said, Monica, I mean, if you are caught talking to somebody else during a test, that's cheating. And we're in real life, we do that all the time. If we have a problem to solve, we go to the people who are better than us to bounce ideas off of. And, you know, if we could do that in an environment where we're supported and so that, you know, I actually think all of these areas are so interconnected. You know, there's none that just stand alone. It's, but I think for me, collaboration is one of the biggest things. It's, you know, we shouldn't just sit down and be quiet and do what we're told. We should be, you know, getting ideas from other people and, you know, be curious about what other people are doing. And I think that is one of those things that in some environments are just, they're not appreciated. And I think that's one of the difficulties that I think when you get to be an adult, sometimes that's hard for people because they haven't become skillful at that. And then when you go to connect that to composure, it's how to collaborate with somebody who has a differing viewpoint than you. And I feel like without being given opportunities when we're young to learn how to debate and do it peacefully and diplomatically, it gets to a point where you can't maintain your composure. I see it all the time at in my pizzeria. If you know you wait an extra 10 minutes for a pizza, and I tell you, composure is not a skill for many people. And but I think I love these 8 C's. I think this should be part of everybody's daily routine is working on these different areas. So I don't know.
The sad part is these are considered soft skills. Like these aren't the important things. These are things you slot, like these are the things the teachers are saying, I don't have time for this. I have a curriculum. And that is so sad. That is really sad. Now, we had a couple things here in the chat. I want to see if you guys want to elaborate on it. I know Julie mentioned that the competitive nature is the worst, and Brid mentioned collaboration, communicating, compassion, and critical thinking. Either of you want to elaborate a little bit on what that means to you? I appreciate you putting it in. Hi, Brid, go ahead.
I'll just, yeah, hi. I have a bit of a migraine, so I didn't expect I expected to be able to be on camera more, but just to be able to link and say hi to everybody. Yes, I mean, like you said, they're soft skills. This is what I'm trying to do in a more holistic view of education, is to elevate social and emotional learning to the same as this cognitive development, which is something that is happening naturally. You can't stop a child from learning. You know, we are humans even, because we're wired that way. So it's not something, you know, we encourage it, we give the opportunities, but we also have to give the opportunities for them to be able to collaborate and practice compassion. And what you just said there, I taught in classrooms for 15 years, and I've moved away from that towards homeschooling and facilitating homeschoolers and developing a holistic eco-conscious community here in San Jose. Is just normal teachers saying, I don't have time for that I've got a curriculum to do. And that's exactly the problem. there's so many ways to do different things by integrating subjects and by and when I've talked to parents, I'm like, these big numbers, 25, 30 children in a class. I once had 32 6-year-olds in a classroom, like mind blowing. How can you give them all more attention? Like, bringing this numbers smaller, which is what I'm trying to do, have smaller numbers means we can pause and take the learning moment for composure. What do you need right now? Or how to regulate, or how is the environment thing? Or do you want to, take some space? And without, like, the work, other things can wait, because those are the learning opportunities that we're missing by just moving on. And it's actually, I believe, putting a lot of, pressure, as well as, how do I say, this messaging to think that their feelings aren't important, or that we brush that aside. And what's that causing then is trauma when they're older, trauma, and having to deal with it later in 20 years time, in 30 years time, when something else falls apart. And all of this programming is happening when children are, our children, when we are children. I've had to come back to a lot of repairing and reparenting myself, even from when I was a child. And if we had more space and time to these things, like you said, collaboration and being compassionate towards each other, and this is social and emotional learning. Now companies are seeing those EQ as just as more important than IQ, how they're going to get on in a team. So these are my subjects for school. This is the subject: critical thinking, communication, collaboration, as opposed to reading, write, math. Those will all come. That's all to say. But thank you for Monica.
Oh, I so appreciate you saying that, because I think so much people live in fear. And now that we know neuroscience, you really can't really learn when you're in a fear state.
Yeah.
Right. The only way you bring it back is to recreate the fear state.
Yeah.
Okay, so we use fear to, I don't know, indoctrinate. Okay. And then we bring it back with more fear. But the rest of the time, that information, that skill, it's not available.
Mm.
It's not available to someone to be competent. So it's so important. Yeah. And I love Kathy Ann said here, I used to say I can't listen to 32 dreams a day. Wow. I mean, but it's because we're trying to find one lesson that's going to meet the needs of 32 people. That's impossible. And I think Marlise is here. She's a
Can I build on that idea a little, Monica?
Sure. I'd love to hear more, Flora.
Yeah. So that idea of, like, one lesson that's going to meet the needs of all 32 people, that's something that has really bothered me, is this sort of, like, mass standardization, and the idea that everyone needs to learn the same thing. And I think what I like see a need for is almost like acceptance that we don't have control, right? Like that we can't have control, kind of, and to just kind of lean into that lack of control and say, I don't know what students are going to take out of my class, and that's okay. Like, that's like being able to adapt and have flexibility in meeting students where they're at, as opposed to saying, this is what the students need to learn, right? Because as soon as you make it a mandate, you're going to get resistance, right? And also, as soon as you make it a mandate, there's someone who's deciding what is mandated, and that's, so one person is up in an ivory tower saying, this is the important thing that everyone needs to learn, right? And it's like, well, I don't actually know if trigonometry is going to be relevant to this student's life. It probably won't be. Most people don't use trigonometry. Just like, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell became a meme because everyone was like, school is nonsense. We're learning ridiculous stuff that has no bearing on our life. And I think, like, I want to authentically pursue curiosity and creativity. And I think in order to do that, we need to accept that we don't know where the end point is. We don't know where it's going, and just following it wherever it goes.
And he quotes in the book, one second, I'll give you turn over to you, that 50% of the workforce is going to need to retool in 5 years. 50%. That's crazy. Oh my gosh, teacher effectiveness training. Oh my goodness. Do you know how old that is? Julie, we are really dating ourselves here. I don't know how many other people remember that, but that's the fuzzies and the pricklies. Oh yeah, that's great. Yeah, you're so right, Flora. I mean, it's just, we don't know. And that piece that you touched on, that power over, is taking away the agency. And without agency, people can't grow. You need agency to be able to grow. And when we take agency away, then we've disempowered the learner significantly. Kathy Ann, you had.
Yeah, it makes me
Go
think
ahead,
of
Flora.
like the way that we use like punishment to try to like instill responsibility, and it's like
Oh yeah,
how are
right.
we expecting to teach kids to be responsible if we are telling them this is what you need to do, and if you don't do it, then there's going to be constant, like it just, oh, there's no autonomy. And then we're shocked when like when the kids, I don't know, it reminds me of this quote from Alfie Kohn's book Punished by Rewards. He says,
Yeah.
control breeds the need for more control, which is then used to justify the use of control.
Yes, very much. And you know, we can't control for all the variables right anymore. The world is, they would say, like before 1950, people could pretty much predict where they were going to be in their lives because they didn't move and change. That's not the case anymore. Kathy Ann, you've been waiting so patiently. Go for it.
Well, you know me, I always go with whose school is it? We've talked for years. One of my favorite author of textbooks, Marion Brady. I fell in love with him when I was a kid that was left in the teacher's storeroom to get me out of the teacher's way. And I read all the textbooks, and his just had a desire to read. I loved his writing. And so ongoing many years, and he did some wonderful things on systems learning and developed a curriculum for using the community as your curriculum. One of the things in that discussion was always the big thing that's missing when you look at any of the curriculum is, where does the new information go? You know, where's the new stuff? Where's the things that are current to the kids? Even habitually, we talk about the kids that speak English or King's English, that they have a standard, and that's not going to get you very far with today's people. You need to be able to use abbreviations. You need to be able to use slang. You need to be able to communicate in emojis. The new skills that they're actually using in their communication are totally being overlooked or being treated as if they're distractions, instead of the heart of what they're doing is communicating. And how cool is it that the kids that are very challenged by language are doing so well now? I mean, this whole pandemic has been the biggest blessing for my autistic young adults, because they've got the skills. They can do the internet, and they've got these groups and followings and things like that that are the core of the curriculum and what you want them to be learning. And he does mention in the book, I can't teach a kid farming, but I can teach them gardening, because all the resources for farming are done by big pharma with an F, USDA. All of the resources that I would use are not appropriate to today's permaculture. And what the kids need today is permaculture. So I can't use the old resources from how to farm, but I have to go for gardening, grow your food. How does a plant work? And how do plants relate to each other? And talking about the lettuce analogy, there's a lot of kids that have never seen lettuce. That we talk like everybody's seen one grow, and that's because we used to all see them grow. That my mom used to plant carrots along the sidewalk as an edging, so that we could ask as a special treat to pull one out for a snack.
Oh, that's lovely.
the kids-
That's creative.
Yeah, and wash it in the hose. She didn't even let us in the house, but that was. But anyway, the whose school is it, and how do we go from USDA supplied resources on chemical agriculture? How do we get past that to the permaculture skills the kids need now? And he talks
Yeah.
about it as rewilding education.
I love that phrase. Yes, it does. Good deal. Well, I know we're going to be running out of time here, and I know some folks, but I want to make sure we turn it over to Laura, because she's talking about some of the solutions. And just so that you know, we will be talking about this book again next month, because we've just found that the first time we talk about it, we just go this deep. But once people have a chance to read it, then we have deeper, and maybe try and have some breakout rooms and things next time too. So in case you have to leave and you don't get to hear this at the end, we wanted to tell you we're going to be talking about this again in June. Laura, let me turn it over to you. How's that?
Sounds good. I'm actually going to share my screen. I have slides to keep me on track. I'm going to try to get through this so we
I love
can.
when people are more organized than me. I had a plan to do that, but it didn't work out.
It helps me stay focused. And this next section is on creating miracles. And I'm going to start with a quote from that chapter. Okay, come on. Well, as this takes a minute to respond to me. Okay. Starting with a quote from the chapter, our role is to create the right conditions for life and learning to flourish. When we do that, we realize we have been in the miracle business all along. And that's basically how this chapter starts. Something that I think there's different systems that exist in the world. There's simple systems and complex, and education is definitely one of those complex systems. And there are so many things that affect a school community, the community of learners. So basically, community of learners is a group that comes together to learn with and from each other. And just looking at all these words, there's so many different elements. You've got the community, you've got how the sense of safety that kids have, are they being bullied or not? Or then you've got administration, and you've got the government, and there are so many things that affect the overall education ecosystem. So what I really want to focus on in this chapter is some of the different elements to invigorate the culture. And I liked how he talked about diversity and how important that is. And when we think about like the standard classroom of today, it's not very diverse. You've got kids who are all the same grade, the same ages. They're all like part of the same community. We don't have a lot of interconnectedness. It's, you've got the one teacher who's leading the same group of kids throughout the course of the year. So invigorating the culture is, we need less focus on the outcome, which is that like the test scores and getting good grades, and more on the process. We need to focus on creating conditions for this ecosystem to thrive. And again, he says the key to that is diversity. So the first element, and I think this is something he mentions, valuing the teachers. And I would say that that's something that we need to put parents into that group, and not just teachers within the school. I think this applies not just to school age children. I think this is, for just our human development. It's, recognizing the people that are teaching us. And, but in our school system, we all know teachers are undertrained, they're unpaid, undervalued, they're micromanaged. And what we really would like to see us get to is getting teachers as trusted professionals, having them, making sure they're trained well and compensated well, a constant process of adjusting and judging and responding. So, and like we talked about the textbook, not relying on that textbook. That's actually one of the reasons I left. They handed me a textbook and they said, I'm not doing that. And it's because it's not fun. It's not creative. It's for me, I'm like, I had my master's in education and they're handing me something that's just spelled out where I've created my own classroom. And I think a lot of teachers are in that position right now. And, it becomes, just that rote learning is not exciting. And I think that's where we are today. It's one of the reasons why I didn't go back to the classroom is I don't like to be told what to do. So, and I'm guessing that our students don't either. So our children don't either. If we could look at our teachers and by teachers, I mean teachers, parents, employers, the people that are very successful in those roles inspire. It's not just feeding information, it's that inspiration. And those are the teachers that we hear about that are doing an exceptional job. It's because they know how to encourage inquiry, get the kids to ask questions, and really get original thinking to be produced. And that's what we should be looking for. We have a thriving school ecosystem is interdisciplinary. So cross-pollination between all aspects of the curriculum is more reflective of real life. That's what Monica had mentioned earlier, how, what was the terminology used? The discipline versus the subject. If we can mix things together, science is not a separate entity from art. They're so interconnected. And if we could see the art and science and really get those interdisciplines to work together, I think we'd be able to instill the imagination, the creativity even more. And the other thing is mixing age groups. If we could group by maybe stages of mastery and offering a variety of experiences. When we have mixed age groups, we get the opportunity to nurture. Some people, I think I was guilty of this as a parent, having wondering, if my child is in a group of people that maybe she's more advanced in some skills, what is she going to get out of that? And I think that we don't recognize those things as valuable as the ability to nurture, the ability to be patient, and feeling empowered and respected. And those things are just as important as, and I think people have this misconception that you want your child to always be like within, you don't want I know a lot of parents didn't want their child to be like at the top of their class, and not recognizing all the skills that can be developed in that area. Learning empathy and responsibility and all of those soft skills that we discussed earlier. And then a thriving school system personalizes learning. This is where, and I think this is where a lot of homeschool environments can get really have more value, is getting that one-to-one connection. And that I know when I left teaching, it was not encouraged. It was I mean, I always brought in as many parents as I could into the classroom, but when my kids were in school, I was not welcome. I was not a welcome part of the classroom. And for me, that just didn't make sense. I'm like, why don't we more can interconnect and more can dialogue one-on-one with children? I think we can build better relationships. So I had a couple things I underlined in this chapter. One was, there is no alternative. Education is personal. And I think Flora had mentioned that before. It's like you can't, I can't remember the comment you made, but it was along the lines of, you know, how important are some of the things that we learn, and why must everybody learn the same thing? The true fact of the matter is, we're not all learning the same thing, even within the same classroom. And the teacher has no control over what the learner is taking away from that classroom. So the idea of everybody needs to learn the same thing, it's like, first of all, they're not. I think we need to get rid of that idea that, you know, we're all, you know, in the same classroom, so therefore we're walking away with the same things. It's not possible. Personalized learning is an investment, not a cost. So we don't want our learners to be disengaged. You know, if you're disengaged, you're not really doing a whole lot of learning, and we need to personalize it. You know, the fact is, we can personalize our cars, our phones, our computers. The fact that so many people think we can't personalize education is, I think that's an outdated way of thinking. We need to find a way to personalize it. And next up is having a flexible schedule. The bell schedule, you know, let's start with getting rid of that. Of course, it's easier to manage. That's a lot of these things have come into place because of administrative tasks. It's easier. But imagine a business that was run by, you know, oh, the bell rings and then you have to start working on something else. A business would fail if that was the case. So keeping the schedule flexible, keeping assessment in perspective. There are different types of assessments. They can be diagnostic, which is like a level of development. Formative assessments is gathering information to support your progress. And then the summative assessment is like a judgment of overall performance. A lot of our assessments now have become very standardized, so the purpose of them has been lost. The assessment should be daily, but not like standardized. It's constantly assessing and figuring out how, you know, tweaking things on a day-to-day basis, rather than filling, you know, the classroom with all of this information and then taking a test at the end. There's no you know, when I took all my teaching training classes, and I think every teacher knows this to be true, the assessment is for the purpose of guiding the instruction, and we've gotten so far away from that. So it should be interwoven in our daily process, and not like a painful, you know, sit down and take a test kind of thing, but it's like looking at how do we communicate with each other and things like that that are so important. But again, if you're one person standing in front of 30 kids and then try to figure out if they know the information, either at the end of the day or at the end of the month or at the end of the school year, you're not really using assessments for what their purpose should be for, is, you know, how to proceed. And then this next one is a big one. It's the importance of play. And that has been, it's been trivialized and in fact reprimanded. Play is an expression of learning, and kids absolutely need the space and freedom. Play is natural. It's I'm going to say this again, it's an expression of learning. So the fact that, you know, when kids come into a classroom, play, you know, the recess is constantly being shortened, and and I think that's where, with homeschooling or even unschooling environments, have become so valuable to children and their well-being, is they're given a chance to play and act out scenarios. A parent, and this is kind of a sad commentary on our society, but she was horrified that her kids were playing a game of school shooter game. And, and it's really not that different from playing a game of cops and robbers or cowboys and Indians. And it's a way for kids to process those kinds of things. And, in that play, they figure out solutions to their problem and how to combat that. And it empowers them to try to come up with solutions to a horrific situation. So, but this parent's like, oh, I'm not going to allow my child to do that. I think we have to change our thinking about what play means. And if we could continue to play into adulthood, I think that would be, I think quality of life would improve greatly for many. Just a couple more: making meaningful connections, really connecting with the community. And that community engagement will make education real world and relevant. I know, trigonometry, I took it, it was irrelevant. I knew I wanted to be a teacher. I'm like, this is, I saw no purpose in it. So therefore I took the class, and immediately after the class, everything about trigonometry, aside from, I know the words sine and cosine, but I have no idea what they mean, because it was meaningless to me. I'm not going to hold on to that information. But especially bringing in the parent and caregiver. And again, with homeschooling, I think that homeschoolers get a lot more variety, I think, because they're able to go interact with the community. And I think they have a lot more skills involved with collaboration and that communication piece. Then there's the physical environment. The classrooms of today are largely the same that they've been for the last 100 years. So lighting, temperature, air quality, the setup of the furniture, it's all going to affect your mood, your motivation, and your vitality. And then listening to the participants. We need to listen to our children. They need to be involved in the decision-making, sharing respect, learning to have empathy for the needs of the group and the whole community. Because, the children are the heart of the program. And that is just so important. So creating miracles, it's as educators, we need to create conditions for growth, development, and learning to happen. And that is, in a nutshell, I think, how we can, things that we can do at home, at school, in our own lives, these can all apply and be relevant to all of us. So that is the end of that. Whoops, it's not letting me. I'm going to stop sharing here. So I don't know if anybody wants to add to any of those things or comment further.
I'd love to have folks add. Marlies, it looks like you might be unmuting. I can't tell.
Oh, thank you, Monica. I just wanted to say thank you so much to you and all the people that contributed to this conversation. I left it on my phone while I was waiting for my other Zoom to start, and then I got a message saying that we needed to reschedule that meeting. So I'm glad I didn't log out. I was trying to get every little last drop of this conversation.
Thank you.
I was also really excited to hear that there will be more of these conversations. It's so important.
Yes. Yeah. And I think the more people who can contribute, there's wisdom in the what I call the circle, right? There's wisdom that arises from everybody's perspective and everybody's experience. So we hope we gave enough of a framework today, and so that you can dive a little deeper. And then, like I said, next month, maybe we can do something where we have some breakout rooms where we can, if somebody wants to dive into the competencies a little bit more, or somebody wants to dive into the miracle, you know, how do we create this in a community? Or because some of you I know are looking to create new programs, and you know, I've created a number of them now over the years, so I'm happy to share. I'm right now looking more to partner with people and help other people get their communities going as much more than I want to start another one. But I think it's that cross-pollination that we get when we, and it's intergenerational, right? You want people from different generations, not because older generations know everything, but we have been around the sun a few times. We might be able to help, you know, minimize some of those potholes we all fell into. And I think then the youth bring new ideas, and things like that is just so important to be hearing everybody's voice. Julie, you just put Carrie McDonald. Yes, she's doing an awful lot of work on new and different ways of looking at education. I was just going to say, Flora, you might want to check out some of her work. She's really looking at lots and lots of alternative endeavors, and looking at it from lots of different perspectives. But this, like so many of you have already done this, some of you are just starting. It's a great conversation. I hope we can continue it, because and bring your friends. You know, if you thought this was great, and we're going to be having another one. It'll be the second Saturday in June. I don't know the date. Second Saturday in June.
11th, or let me check real quick.
Yes.
June 11th at 10
June
o'clock
11th. Yes.
Pacific Standard Time, or Pacific Daylight Time.
Yeah. June 11th. It's 10 Pacific Daylight Time, 1 Eastern. But we'll create another event for it. But you know, please share it with your friends and invite people to come, because when we have bigger groups, then we try and get into smaller groups. You know, so I hope everybody felt comfortable sharing in our smaller group today. But when we have bigger groups, there are just some people who don't like sharing in a big group. So when the group gets over about 10, you know, I just say, oh, we got to have breakout rooms and stuff, because we really want everyone to talk. Because I don't think people feel a part of a meeting until they get a chance to say something. So
yes,
we
and
want to
I'd
make
love
sure
to really discover more ideas on how to put some of these ideas into practice in daily lives. I think not only for our children, but for ourselves as well, things that we can do to tweak our environments and our community, and really get those 8 C's into a daily practice.
Good. Anyone else have anything else? We want to honor everybody's time who've been here for, you know, on a beautiful Saturday. Other thoughts? Brid, Gail, Kathy Ann, Laura? No? Brid,
Well,
you're unmuted?
I was just
Go
going to
ahead.
say this. I don't think we have time for you to answer this now, but I'll just say that I'm really curious how everyone here is connected. So maybe in the next one, we can learn a little bit more about how this miracle happened.
Oh, that's fun. That's fun. Yeah. Because everybody is connected to somebody here. It is amazing.
Yeah.
Everybody here is connected to somebody else, at least one other person.
And cross connections, a number of the names, it was just like, oh, okay, era school starters, and you know, just kind of they're.
I also noticed a lot of people put some resources in the chat, and I wish I had thought to save the chat, but I logged off of my other device. So of course I missed those, and I lost track of who said what, but I was also excited to see Freire get a little shout out too on the chat.
Yeah, we'll save the chat. I can pop it off to you, Marlise, if you like.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Yes. So thank you all. I think Brid, you're unmuted.
Yeah, no, all I wanted to say was thank you as well, not to add to discussion since we're in time up. Thank you all. This is my first time at, I don't know how many of these kind of meetings you've had, But so I hope to join next month as well and have the book read by then. It's a super short book, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I didn't get in on that. So thank you all for preparing and hosting the space. And
Thank you. Thanks so much. Kathy Ann, you're
Thank you all.
unmuted. Thank you.
Oh,
Yep.
no, that's just because I haven't gotten to the button yet. Thank you all.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Thanks, everybody. We'll be on for a few more minutes as other people leave, and if you have other things you wanted to share.
Just a big thank you.
Thank you, Marlies. Thank you so much for coming. We really do have to connect. We have a lot. We share a lot.
I would love that. You know, you were singing my song the whole time, all of you. So definitely look forward to connecting. Maybe we can even have a quick chat before the 11th. But either way, I'll be looking forward to seeing you, and I'll make it a point to get my hands on the book too.
Sounds good. We'll
Okay.
see you soon.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Gail, I see you often, but I'm so glad you came today. Thanks so much. You have a ton of things on your plate, so we appreciate you coming. Gail's going to be, oh, we'll stop the recording here. Do you want to stop the recording?